So this is the vault photo that we'll be creating today inside of Blender. I'm thinking we'll probably make it a little bit more cinematic. I find it easy for us to just load in a background image and then just go from there. I like adding in a plane. That way I can kind of set up a camera angle using the plane as like our positioning. I'm going to, pretty easy, we're just going to make some stairs here. Pretty much the whole back wall here is going to be just a wall. So let's go ahead and scale this up. I don't like the steps that I have at all, actually. So I'm going to select these and delete them. Let's just delete every other here. Let's see, let's grab that on the Z-axis and then fill that in. It's totally fine. I mean, we're not even, I don't even think we care really about the rest of the steps down here. I think we overcomplicated that. We just needed the one stair because, I mean, honestly, we're not seeing past the camera anyways. So yeah, let's try that. So first of all, we're going to just use a cube. We'll scale that down. But let's just go into edit mode here and then grab this face and just have it go all the way across to the other side. Let's just move this down. And then I'm going to use an array, honestly, and set that to 0. And on the y-axis, just make this a little bit wider. We just need it to be the width of kind of like that metal bar that we're going to be creating. Oops, let's grab this on the y-axis. Just move that over. And then I'm going to make each one about 0.2 as far as the width is concerned. And then now if we just increase this array amount all the way to the other side, and that's totally fine. So now if we select our flooring that we have here, I'm just going to hide the solidify, and then we will use a Boolean, which we could do the Boolean before the solidify, honestly, and select our cubes that we just added in there. Now if we hide these cubes, they should create kind of like a pass-through, which they're not. I find sometimes fast works best. I don't know why exact is a little bit buggy for me, but yeah, so now we're going to go ahead and that's going to create all of our like long cylinder pieces that we want to have. I'm going to make some more adjustments. Let's go ahead and then instead of doing this as 1.2, let's change this to 1.1. Now if we go ahead and hide that and we just add in a couple more, that works pretty nicely. Let's go ahead and look back at our reference here. We're going to want to have cylinders that are going to go through kind of like sideways on this. So let's go ahead and unhide this, and on our Boolean here I just want to apply that. We can keep our solidify modifier there, it's all good. And yeah, let's go ahead and add just in a new cylinder. But yeah, if we scale this down to about the right size, I'm thinking probably there is fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the cubes that we have, and then if we scale that down to, looks good to me, let's grab this face and move it all the way to this side. And I'm okay with it kind of coming up above the cubes just ever so slightly. And we're just going to have this go all the way across to the other side of the walkway. But yeah, now if we use an array and we just extend this out slightly to the distance of which we're going to want this to be at. Will it be all the way up to the edge of this? Yeah, we'll plan for it to be. And then yeah, now we just go ahead and extend more on our array. This should just give us some more complex kind of detail. I'm okay with that. I do want to almost take the whole piece here. Let's take this and we're going to apply the solidifier on this. And if I take all of this, I'm going to go ahead and thicken that up a little bit. And then of course this stair, we're not necessarily seeing it, but we're going to want it to be longer as well. But I think it all kind of depends on who you are. If you're the type of person that likes to have class projects, when I went to school for something completely different, but even in that, the majority of my learning came through like extracurricular things that I kind of taught myself. I think the thing that I liked about university was the camaraderie you get from your classmates, where it's a lot easier to collaborate on projects. No one's really asking for money or compensation in any way. It's not about that. It's all about just creating new things. And I say take advantage of that while you can. I think Alt-S scales, yeah, it scales on the axis, or like scales everything inward. And then, yeah, I'm going to just grab this bottom piece here, thinking we can create a nice bevel around the edges on here. But I want to see if we can use that through the modifier rather, so that way we don't have to do this inside of the edit mode. We'll just increase the amount of segments here. And I want to make the bevel size a little bit smaller as well. So that's a 0.1, so let's do a 0.05 on that. And then yeah, now we can go ahead and just grab this top piece here. And if we extrude that upwards, we'll just go ahead and leave ourselves enough room here. We can go ahead and extrude this outwards to another pipe that we want to create. So yeah, so now just blocking out all of these kind of rails that we want to have in. But if we just create one piece here, and actually we even just grab this and make this go all the way to this end over here, what we might want is, let's go ahead and just grab that piece there. If I select this face and then I set the cursor to selected, I can always go to object and then set the origin to the 3D cursor, which is right at that face. And then I can add in a mirror to that. Again, we'll do that before, so that way we get rid of that seam that we have. And the nice thing is now we're going to have kind of like this railing piece that we have. And that's just the middle kind of ground element that we want. So now I can just go and duplicate that over to another section over here. And we can create the overarching kind of railway that's going to go over top of everything. So that's just like the small rail. Okay, how do I bridge this? I know that there's a shortcut. Is it... And then type in, I want to do bridge, edge, bridge, loops. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. 0 on the twist, number of cuts. Wow, that actually worked pretty nicely. So we're just going to go ahead and extrude that outwards to the other side. And again, we could probably just mirror these. So I'm at this point going to just add a mirror in. I'm also going to say... we're going to add the cursor to selected and set the origin to 3D cursor. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Although, let's see, we want the railing to go all the way to the edge here. So I'm going to add that in a little bit further and say cursor to selected. And then object set origin to 3D cursor. Oh, I have to select that. That looks exactly how I want that to look. Perfect. And now I'm just going to move this a little bit further over here. Probably use some kind of Bezier curve. Just grab this and move this over here. Probably something along the lines of that. I'll just scale that down as well. But if we scale that up, that's going to give us a nice like curved walkway. I'm going to select all of this and just apply my modifiers. I just wanted to see if I can do it using the curve tool. That was easy, guys. Why were we overcomplicating that? Add in the subdivide surface before the curve tool, keep it on simple, and then duplicate this a few times. I think 4 should totally be fine. 2 could work. Let's go ahead and apply that, and then we could go ahead and just delete this curve. At this point, we're really going off script here because these stairs are massive. I'm not a fan of how claustrophobic any of this stuff is, so let's try moving it all back a little bit. We add another Bezier curve in. We're going to rotate this, scale this like X by 0, so that way it just completely rotates around. And then here, we can grab this side of things and just move it down to reach the bottom of the steps. Whereas the top one, we can just move to the top of the steps. So we'll just have it start there, and then it just rotates all the way around. And we can just scale that up and then bring that out. Might even rotate it slightly. And then let's go ahead and just duplicate this whole thing, and we'll do what we did earlier. I should have just made a preset of this. We'll just apply all of our modifiers. I'm going to select the bottom piece here and then just say cursor to select it, and we'll set the origin to that 3D cursor. And now if I duplicate this, which I'm going to, and we'll just use a curve tool on it, and we'll apply this object to this curve tool here. And if I say Shift S, cursor to selected, and then we just select this guy and then say selection to cursor, that should work a lot better. And now all we have to do is grab this on the X-axis and it'll move it up the stairs. I suppose one way we could do this is let's take this whole thing, and instead of having everything applied, let's take the Bezier curves here and scale everything down on the Z-axis to 0, so that way we have the size in which we want everything to happen. And now if we apply our curves, and I delete the Bezier curve, I can grab this top piece here. And now, just grabbing different sections of this, we can just go back to wireframe here. With proportional editing, if we selected just this half over here, then we turn on proportional editing, we'll just have all of that kind of like stretched downwards. That actually might be a little bit easier to fix the problems. And then now we could keep proportional editing on, but then just scale it way down. Great. That's a lot less messy than it was before. We only have a few issues now, and we can clean that up. Let's just grab this front piece here, and we'll just extrude that outwards. And yeah, now that's off camera. Let's go ahead and do our little cubes that we did earlier and then just do another Boolean maneuver. I should have not deleted that, but I did. So now here we are, guys. Back to square one with creating our Booleans. Overall, I'm going to just add in this as like our main back wall. Maybe even a little bit further back because everything will be somewhat thick. I'm going to grab this edge here and we'll just go all the way to the end. I'm also going to probably select our camera just so we can see a little bit better. But let's turn on the visibility of our background image here. I just want to find that corner because there is a corner over here. Of course, this pops out a little bit, but there's a corner over here and then we'll just have that kind of stretch that way. It's the nice thing about us having this kind of roughly the correct scaling of everything on our camera is that we can just line everything up pretty easily to the angle of the camera and then make all of our modeling choices from there. I'm not a gamer, guys. I make movies. Add in edge loops all the way around here, and if we just extrude that and scale that out, it just gives us a little extra beveled edge all the way around the cube. And then, of course, I like to add in some more edge loops there, and then go ahead and grab that. And honestly, all we're doing here is just scaling that down and then just having this wire kind of like hanging at the bottom of the cube. But I do feel like the majority of the time for a lot of prequels that come out these days, no one really gives a crap about the characters. It's not like we really needed to see a prequel to that because it didn't add any extra. It's not extra things that I actually care about. It's mostly just like, oh, I like the show because I like the show. And I think that might be a reason why a lot of the kind of like adaptations somewhat flop. How far can you push a fandom before they give up on your constant trying to make a new series? So let's make that the general circle here. And then now we could go ahead and add in some bolts. Let's go ahead and scale this all the way down. I feel like there's so many TV shows now. And honestly, the more and more I think about it, it kind of makes sense. Because streaming platforms, the way they make their money back is through subscription-based. And because they're subscription, they need to have people on there from a per-month perspective, not necessarily on like, oh, hey, let's just make one film and have it released. They need people to stay on there for months. And so if they release episodes weekly, then they can have them come out on a weekly basis, which means that you have subscribers for a designated period of time that now have to stay subscribers in order to watch the whole show. And of course, as we're doing everything else, we'll add in more bolts and like all that crap. So let's see, let's add in a cube now, and then I'm just going to have this go to the top here. I'm going to use this to kind of create like a hole that's going to like be inside of that vault door. Let's duplicate this guy, scale him by X slightly. We're just gonna chop it pretty deep. And so then now if I take this guy, let's add a Boolean in and chop out this cube here. And yeah, we just go ahead and hide that basically. But using this, we'll just use the fast. We do need it to be, let's see, if we grab all of these guys and just extrude them this direction. There we go. And then yeah, now we hide that. That'll create a wall for us, which is also what we kind of want. That's going to create a lot of deforms on our wall. Unless we do that before the subdivide, which is always possible. There we go. Smooth by angle totally works for us as well. So that way it's not going to have any problems with the edges. And then yeah, so I'm thinking let's take our Boolean that we created here, this guy, and we're just going to unhide him real quick. Just kind of want to scale that up almost. Create the top edge here. And we'll go and duplicate this and then rotate this by -45. And they're all just using the same modifier, so we can just join them together. And door cutout. Now, with this being said, let's go ahead and just... And then, yeah, so now we can just throw that inside of our Boolean to disable it and not look at it again. Now, with our main kind of thing here, which this really screwed up our whole thing, by the way. Oh, because I applied it before the subdivision. That's fine. Let's just take, for our sake, let's just grab this, apply this into our Boolean, and then we can just hide it so that way we don't see it. But then it's always going to be cutting there. And that way, if we want to, we can actually just completely get rid of it later. But for right now, we can just keep it in there, and then that's not necessarily a problem. Let's go ahead and grab this guy, and then we're going to duplicate him and then rotate him on, and we'll just duplicate that, rotate it by 45 degrees. Overall, we're going to want the outside of this to have kind of like this kind of cog pattern that we have at the top. And we could do that by creating another Boolean that's going to cut into everything on the outside. Going to the front view here, let's go ahead and add in a cube. I just want to make sure that the object that I create is pretty consistent all the way around. Yeah, let's go ahead and add in a mirror here, and so that way if I duplicate this, then I'm getting a mirror on the x-axis, and then also on the y-axis. I can also use a circle as a reference. And then we'll select the outside edges of this, and then scale that inwards like so. And then yeah, that creates kind of like this cut piece that goes all the way through the center here. The idea of this is really just to use this almost like a cookie cutter. So it's still decently messy, so let's just delete everything and then extrude it downwards. Probably could have been easier just to do it on a cube in the first place, but that's fine. So now we can take this guy, and let's rotate him on the x-axis 90 degrees. We're going to use this to kind of chop out the entire center of our vault that we have here. So if we just grab that and place that in there, it should kind of work. And then now if we grab all of this side of the thing, we just scale it up. And we'll scale it up on the median point. So that way everything kind of scales up, and so then everything kind of goes outwards on our selection. And depending on what we set for that, we can set that all under to our Boolean. But before we do that, let's select our main door that we have here. And then we're going to want another Boolean, just like we did before. I'm going to say Boolean fast operator and select our big old cube that we got going on here. And then now, if we select this big cube that we have and throw it under our Boolean, we'll see that we have our cut marks already in there. Now we can make our adjustments by scaling that in potentially. You know, make different adjustments where we need that. I'm going to add in a circle here, roughly where we want to have that like little yellow kind of selection chamber or locking mechanism chamber. We can also just take this doorway, for instance, duplicate it, and then I'm going to get rid of all of the Booleans that we had. And then let's go into here. I'm going to duplicate kind of like this circle that's going on here. And then if I, let's see, let's go out into edit mode here, and this is going to go all the way to the top. And let's see, I also want it to go to this guy as well as to this, or this, or this. If we just duplicate this thing, now we have ourselves a just a straight edge. So let's go ahead and delete our excess circle that we added in here. I could apply our subdivide surface that we already have. And now if I convert this to a curve, we have geometry controls that will allow us to control the size of it, right? So if I change the depth here, then we can create like a pipe along the inside edge of this this circle without us really having to do anything. We already have the circle. We already have the size in which we want it. I think now we'll create the mechanism on the top and select the area in which we want this to be. Probably something like this. And all I'm going to do is just duplicate this piece and then make it its own separate object. And then if we go grab that plane now, where is that at? There he is. I'm going to remove the Booleans because, again, we don't need the Booleans on this piece. We'll just scale it down. So if I grab everything, scale it down a little bit, and then go to the front view here, I'm thinking that we are going to want the back edge of this. And then now if I grab everything and extrude it outwards, we're going to have ourselves the locking mechanism that we really want. So now it's going to create like this nice little extra topology for like that locking mechanism. And so what we could do now is if I change this to individual origins and then scale this all on the kind of like, I think if we scale them all up slightly, that could work nicely because it's okay that they're bigger than everything else. And then now all we have to do is just extrude them outwards. And if we extrude them outwards and then again, we're going to scale that up. Let's go ahead and for this corner over here, I'm wanting to add in a cube, I think. So let's go ahead and do that. Just have that go all the way up the wall, I think. Might grab that and just have it. So that way we do have it framed. If we ever want to reframe this camera, we can. You know, we're not really too locked into what we have. Then as you guys can see, it's just a lot of just like adding in some of the extra stuff that we're not really going to see. So I'll just duplicate that and move that upwards. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and scale it down. Probably place that somewhere over here. And yeah, go into here and we'll just do the same thing we've been doing. So go to front view, probably extrude and scale that out slightly. But I also feel like we have like 6 flags here. And that's always was just like, oh, well, why would we go to a carnival if you could just go to 6 Flags? And I get that, you know, I'm not saying that I don't agree with that. Like Six Flags obviously is going to be better. I just think that it's like one of those experience type things where you're like, oh yeah, we just went for the fun of it, you know? I did the chair swing ride, but I haven't done it in like forever, dude. Like I feel like that's one of those rides that I haven't done since I was like really little. And yeah, I guess that was one of my favorites too. It's like one of those ones that you kind of forget about though. So yeah, now if we just take these outside edges that we have, let's go ahead and just duplicate these lines that we have here. And then we're going to say P selection. And then now if we go ahead and select those, we can get rid of our booleans that we have. And let's apply our subdivision surface, and then we'll just convert this to a curve. And under our curve settings, now we can go ahead and add in some geometry to our depth. And yeah, now that's going to give us some extra pipelines that we can have. Let's add in another cube over here, and then just a tiny amount of bevel, nothing crazy. We can convert it to a curve and then just add in a little bit more topology to that as well. It's one of my favorite like tricks as of late, because then we don't have to like get Bezier curves and all that stuff to try to line it up. It's just a, ooh, there we go. And then that just adds in this like extra piping that we didn't have before. I'm going to do the same thing for adding in kind of like this pipe lining here to one of the lines here. So if we go ahead and just duplicate that and maybe even move it down slightly to where we might want it. Let's make that its own object. And then if we convert that to a curve, then I might be able to add in some depth to said curve. If I add in a cube now, we're going to want to scale everything up. This is going to kind of just be our lighting. So let's add in a new collection here called, let's call it lighting. And then we'll grab our cube here, move you over into our lighting section. Let's go to viewport display on this and display it as a wireframe. So that way the lighting is still being interacted by it, but it's nothing crazy. So let's go ahead and hit the save button there. Let's first start by creating our ambient lighting from the real world, right? So if we say cursor to selected for this whole thing here, and we go ahead and add in a point light, let's go ahead and just move that back slightly. This point light's just going to be kind of in front of this wall here, but also just right here. And this is going to be super bright. We're just going to increase the brightness of this to like even 1,000. Probably something pretty crazy like 1,000. And then our object here, we're going to want to add several materials to it. So before we do that, let's go ahead and take this, duplicate them, move them all the way over there. So now we got two bright lights behind both these kind of like light portal like things that are going to go to the outside world. And then on this, let's go ahead and create a new material. And this new material, we'll just call this black metal. And then let's add in a new material, and this is going to be called glass. And here we could probably just adjust this and make it glass. And we'll notice that now we should have light inside of our scene. Should just work. Oh, right. Of course it's not going to work. So then we need to go into edit mode here. And then let's select the face in which we want that to have. Then we hit assign. And then now that's going to have light that's going to go through it and then light up the entire environment. If we were to try to light this a little bit from the inside, let's go ahead and first add in like an area light here. Go ahead and scale it up. Add in some kind of like overarching light that we'll have inside of our scene. And we just want to create kind of like this more warmer kind of like interior that we would normally have. So if we duplicate this and then have this kind of come in from the side over here, maybe even as a spotlight instead of as an area light, and then get more of that kind of like cold interior. Gotta look at a lot of these things as like kind of like how would a gaffer light it on a film set, because that's how we're trying to artistically create this light on all of this. Is that we need to have certain aspects of the image really pop out here. And so for instance, having kind of like this catch the light a little bit brighter here, darker back there, and then a little bit brighter here, and then maybe even darker here, kind of makes a little bit more sense to like how you want your eyes to be engaged and create this silhouette that's natural, and then really make it feel more realistic. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start adding in some shaders to this scene, and then that will really help us see where everything is going and then make some adjustments as we need it. So the first thing we will do is let's just go ahead and do the interior of the door moving outwards. We have two different materials that we're going to want to have. So the first one that we'll do is the yellow paint, and then it goes into kind of like the rusty kind of color past that. So let's add in a new material after that, and then we'll call this rusty metal. Yellow painted metal probably is the best way to name that one. And yeah, I mean, we'll just go ahead and for right now, for our purposes, just make this yellow, and then let's make this rusty color, and then we can add in some materials. So there's going to be a kind of like silver metal piece as well. So let's create a new one, silver metal, and that's going to be all of these guys. So we'll add in silver metal. And silver metal, let's just take this metallic, and then we'll just turn it all the way up so that way we can see it. Turn the roughness down slightly on it. Just for ease of painting later, I'm going to consolidate a lot of this stuff into like single objects. All these front pieces, I'm thinking we're probably going to want to go more on the silver route than anything. So let's select all that as our silver metal. And we'll select this whole grate, add in silver metal. And then the railing itself, probably silver metal. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that. So let's remove the silver metal and then create a railing. And then we'll make our own adjustments, of course, to this. But yeah, let's go to our viewport display here and then just set it to as like a slight green. Create a new material here called box. And what color is the box? Greenish. And then our wire, of course, can be box. Let's find some rusty materials to get us started with, and then we can go from there. So I like to go to poly textures. Okay, let's do a vertical split here, shader editor, and let's select the rusty texture here, and then let's start screwing around with that. First and foremost, we'll notice that everything's freaking out here, so let's see if generated gives us better results. And then let's add in a color ramp so we can really see, because obviously everything's pretty white here, but we want to see the scaling of everything. So then from there, let's go ahead and add in a value node. And it's currently set to default of 1 here, so let's just plug that in so it doesn't freak out. But now if we scale this to be a larger number, we'll notice that the scaling of our texture goes up, which works pretty nicely for us at the scale of 3. But now if we plug our vectors into all of our other image files, they will all get the same exact settings rather than whatever your default UV unwrap settings are. So now if we go view our principled BSDF, we have this pretty basic base color, and we can plug in our normals, our roughness to it, and that'll change the roughness. Now keep in mind, this is not using the color ramp. If we want it to have more roughness, we can always add in a color ramp and then make some adjustments, and then I'll add in like all of this kind of like wetness that's going on in here, this moisture. And then of course, we can always plug in the base color, and that's going to be a pretty dramatic change to a really darker version of it. And then our normals here, we need to convert to a normal map. So we can plug that directly into a normal map and then plug that into our normals here. And then that will make everything feel a little bit more 3D in nature. Now, of course, our displacement, we then pop that over to our displacement. And then that'll make any, if we have dramatic lighting, it probably would be a little bit more obvious in what it's doing there. So let's add in a hue and saturation. And then, of course, if I add in a 0.5, you'll see everything kind of become a little more grayscale. If I remove saturation completely from this, it just makes it like kind of like a black and white texture. And we could always increase the value of this to get this to be a little bit brighter. Now, if I add in the saturation, but also increasing the value to a larger number, then we're going to get a brighter kind of material that we have here. And of course, we're going to play around with this to really get what we want this to have. So let's go ahead and save that. I think it'd be smart for us to find a painted material, something like this green metal rust material that we have here. I like to use this one because it's already kind of the effect that we want. We just have to change the color from green to yellow. So let's go ahead and download this. Okay, great. Now we can go in and do all of our painting that we want to have on top of everything else. And this is where our node graph can get really crazy, is all of the painting stuff that we're going to do on top of it. But we'll keep it pretty simple. I mean, we're going to do some painting primarily on this rusty metal texture that we have here, which is just this main guy here, as well as this guy here. Go over here to our rusty metal material, add in a new image texture. We already created that new image texture, and we're just going to find rusty edges. And if we go and load that, it'll make everything in our entire area black. Now, if we go over to our texture paint module, we can go ahead and paint in everything that we want. Basically, what we need to do is we're going to create a whole new material. So rather than using this principled BSDF that we have right there, we're going to add in a new principled BSDF. And this new principled BSDF is going to have a new material that we're going to create. So let's make sure it's completely metallic, like we had before. And even already, you can kind of tell this is exactly what we want it to look like. We kind of just want it to have like this somewhat brassy kind of like effect. Now, if we take this rusty edges effect that we did, all we're going to do is just say mix shader. And in the top, we're going to use this main principle BSDF, which is this darker effect that we have. And on the bottom, we're going to use that shinier metal attachment. And then now if we plug that into there, and then we plug that into the FAC, if we now view that, we should get these lighter kind of like effects that are going throughout. Now, the only thing we might want to do is add in a color ramp just to make this a little bit more contrasty. Looks pretty good. I have to add the numbers in there because I haven't added the numbers in yet. I mean, hell, we could even do this in Paint. Let's just use MS Paint, honestly. Now, inside of our texture over here, let's go ahead and add in a new image texture. And then we'll go ahead and click New, and then we'll call this Text Matte. 2048 by 2048 is totally good. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and view that real quick. So now it should be black, which it is. And then if we go over to our texture paint window, we're going to need to paint on our text matte. And under our settings here, let's go ahead and remove texture mask, add in a new texture, load that new texture. And so now we need to paint this on. Okay, let's go ahead and finish up some of these other materials that I have here because we're pretty close. And like, honestly, we're just lollygagging at this point. I was going to potentially add in the warning label. Let's go ahead and just, I think that would be a fun little thing. So just open up MS Paint because that's our favorite tool ever, guys. And then just paint it black. And then we need white font. And we'll go ahead and save this to warning label 01. Okay, great. Now we have a new warning label. So let's go ahead and paint that in. Perfect. So now we'll have this kind of like painted white text here. So now we're going to get the text there. We just need to make sure that it really stands out because right now it's kind of washing into the rest of it. So we can adjust all of that through these nodes up here. If we change the value, for instance, to like an 8, that'll just make it white paint instead. And then we don't want this to be too chunky, so let's bring that down. 1 second. What is this? Is that just a reflection? What is that? All right, so it has to do with this rusty edges effect. Found it. So that gets plugged in up there, and then that goes there, and then voila, that fixes the problem. Okay, so now if we shuffle this in correctly, the cool thing is in our Nuke settings, I'm using ACES directly inside of here. And it's the same ACES config file that I'm using for the output. So if I tag this as ACES CG, this actually looks 1-for-1 exactly like what our Blender render is. I'm just going to add in a tiny bit of glow, just ever so slight amount of glow. You can always just say effect only, by the way, on glows, and then just merge them back on top using like a plus. I might even add in another glow before that. Let's just change the tolerance here to something a lot less. Let's add in a lens distortion just so we can see where we're going with this. I do want to distort it. I just will have it happen later down the pipeline. I think also, let's see, let's add the grade node after all of this. And then I just want to add in a roto here. Let's take this. I'm going to invert the effect here, and then we're just going to darken some areas. That way, as I said, we'll shape things here in post before, that way we don't have to do it inside of Blender. We don't have to mess too much around with that. We could just add in a bit of a vignette. Let's see. I'm going to use a crypto matte. That's kind of just making it muddier. I don't think I mind it being green. Actually, maybe that's the thing. Maybe it does need to be a slightly different color. Yeah, that's good. And then if I change the saturation probably after it to be a little less saturated. Cool. Let's do it this way. We're going to add another glow here. And then this one here, we're going to change the tolerance to be a bit more, something like that. And then let's change the brightness here. And then if we do effect only here, I'm going to use this to merge back on top of everything. It's usually pretty realistic is to kind of get like a magenta or a very blue kind of effect going on here. I think that'll probably do it for today's render. But this is the full render right here, guys. But thank you guys so much for joining. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.